Adjusting journal entries may be required from time to time. That's because sometimes transactions are captured incorrectly in the first place, and this is only detected later on. The objective of the adjusting entries is to correct the accounting records so that they reflect the correct entries that should have been processed in the first place. My advice for processing adjusting entries is to follow two key steps. Firstly, simply reverse the original entries that are incorrect and that were processed. That simply means credit all the accounts that were debited and debit all the accounts that were credited by the incorrect journals. By reversing the original incorrect journal, you are effectively putting the accounting records back into a situation where the mistake has been removed from them. That's the first step. The second step is to then process the correct journal entries, what the journals should have been in the first place. This two-step process means you effectively remove the original error and at the same time process the correct entries as they should have been originally. Let's do an example. Lungile is the bookkeeper at Great Zimbabwe Lodge. During the month of July, an electricity bill amounting to 15,000 MAC was received. Due to the rush in processing the journals, Lungile erroneously processed an amount of 1,500 MAC as the journal. This was picked up by her manager, who instructed her to put through adjustments to rectify this. How does she rectify this? Original entries erroneously posted by Lungile were a debit to the electricity expense of 1,500 and a credit to the accounts payable of 1,500. So as we said, first step, reverse the original entries that were wrong. So we're going to debit the accounts payable, 1,500, and we're going to credit the electricity expense, 1,500. That reverses the wrong entries, and it is a process where we are now at ground zero. The trial balance is not incorrect, but it doesn't reflect the transaction that should have been captured. We're now going to process the correct entry. And in this case, we debit electricity expense in the income statement of 15,000 and we credit the accounts payable 15,000 as well. That would have the effect of correcting that entry. Let's do one more example. Tanaka is a newly recruited bookkeeper at AMG Limited. She's responsible for journaling the depreciation on a vehicle that was purchased on the first day of the year for 400,000. The useful life of the vehicle is 4 years. However, Tanaka has erroneously depreciated the vehicle over 5 years. What would the adjusting entries be? So the original entries that were erroneously posted by Tanaka, because she used 5 years over 4 years, was a depreciation expense of 80,000 in the income statement. That was a debit, and there was a credit of 80,000 in terms of accumulated depreciation as a credit. So we have to reverse the original entries. We do that by debiting accumulated depreciation in the balance sheet 80,000 and crediting the depreciation and expense of 80,000 in the income statement. Second step, let's process the correct entries. We simply debit depreciation expense of 100,000 and we credit the accumulated depreciation of 100,000 in the balance sheet. One last example just to make the point and to kill it. Panache is the bookkeeper at Macmart Limited. He's responsible for all journal entries. During the course of the month, Panache erroneously captured a journal entry for sales of 100 million instead of 10 million on a credit sale. What would the adjusting entry be? The original wrong entries posted by Panache were debit accounts receivable 100 million, credit revenue 100 million. We have to reverse this. So we're going to debit revenue in the income statement, 100 million, and credit the accounts receivable, 100 million in the balance sheet. We're then going to put through the correct entry. It should only have been 10 million. So we're going to debit accounts receivable, 10 million, and we're going to credit our revenue, 10 million. That's all that we're doing when we are making, adjusting, and correcting entries. Firstly, we reverse the wrong transaction that was done, and then we put through the correct one that should have been done in the first place.